In this video, we're going to look at the conditions on board a typical famine ship from the 1800s. And we'll also look at some of the benefits and opportunities that America offered Irish immigrants in the 19th century that were fleeing poverty, hunger, and persecution inflicted on them by the British. In order to assist me in the making of this video, I paid a visit to the Dunbrody Famine Ship Experience in New Ross, County Wexford last week. I can only describe this as an oit úntach, a wonderful place. Oit úntach. Agus meallan sé a lán túrasóirí, and it attracts a lot of tourists or a lot of visitors. Meallan sé a lán túrasóirí. I was treated to a private tour by two fantastic guides, Jason and Adam, who did an amazing job because they were so friendly, knowledgeable and enthusiastic. If you're anywhere near the southeast of Ireland, this place is well worth a visit. I'd highly recommend it. For more information, check out www.dunbrody.com. The Irish for a famine ship is Ling ó Hreimhse an Churta. That literally means a ship from the times of hurt. Ling ó Hreimhse an Churta, a famine ship. New Ross was a thriving port town in the 1800s. The Irish for port is Calafort. Calafort. Gnóthach agus Rahul. Busy and thriving. Gnóthach is busy and Rahul is thriving, or a place where there's lots of activity, boisterous and bustling, let's say. Rerá is hustle and bustle. Rerá. This first part of the tour gives us a flavour of what New Ross Port was like in the 1800s. People would often wander down here to the docks to take in the hustle and bustle, as they too probably contemplated a voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. He was contemplating, or he was thinking, bhí sé ag smaoineamh. Bhí sé ag smaoineamh. Trus farige, a sea voyage. Trus farige. Deis is an opportunity, deis, and deisna is the plural of that, opportunities. Beg neart deisna ann. There'll be lots of opportunities there. Beg neart deisna ann. So before long, rivivod, it will be time to get your ticket inspected by the ticket inspector. Cigara ticéad, the ticket inspector. Cigara ticéad. And very soon, the emigrants would be taking their last steps on Irish soil. An taim dernach ar halamh na hÉireann. An taim dernach ar halamh na hÉireann. Their last time on the ground of Ireland. Before we look at the conditions on board the Dunbrody Famine Ship, let's hear some personal stories from some of the immigrants forced to leave this green and fertile land.
I'm the last of the O'Sullivans left on this hill of Knapfierna. My older brothers and sisters are bringing me out to New York. My mother wouldn't go into the workhouse. They would have taken the youngest children away from her. They got the fever, and weak from the hunger, hadn't the strength to fight it.
Dear Bridgie, life is so good here in Boston. Dr. Smith and his wife treat me like one of the family. Having worked in the big house, you will fit in here with no bother. They have given me your fare, which I'm sending in this letter. You can pay it back out of your wages over the next 2 years. Can't wait to see you. Your loving sister, Annie. I will get little enough food during the voyage, so I have cooked this bread 3 times. It is now as hard as slate, but it will last for the length of the journey.
The landlord is giving the passage money as he wants to be rid of us and use the land for grazing cattle. I'm sure he will look after the cattle better than his tenants. At least the grass will always grow and he can sell the cattle.
We are lucky to be alive and have survived the winter. Only for the good Quakers who gave us this yellow meal, which was sent from America, we would all have died surely. We could have had soup from the local landlord, if we were willing to give up our Catholic faith. We would not risk the children's immortal souls for the sake of a bowl of soup. Buenos Dias.
The night before the emigrants left home, neighbours held an American wake for them as they would for their dead. This wake was a mixture of joy and sorrow.
The turf fire which has burnt in this hearth continuously for over 100 years will burn no more. We are all going away.
My father got relief working on the roads, breaking stones for 8 hours a day, for pay of less than 1 penny that would not buy enough food to keep body and soul together. Starving and half naked, the snow and bitter winds of last winter took him away. Like hundreds of our neighbours, he was buried without a cross or shroud in a mass grave.
Our hearts are heavy as we set out to join the ship Dunbrody that will take us across the Atlantic Ocean. But we also go with hope of a brighter future in America for our children and their children.
So once their tickets were inspected and they had said their goodbyes, they climbed aboard. Chuig siad ar board. They climbed aboard, or they went on board. Chuig siad ar board. Travellers were only allowed to be on deck for an hour or so a day in order to get some fresh air and cook some food. The majority of their time was spent down here in second class. Dara Grad, second class. Dara Grad. That's how the vast majority of Irish emigrants travelled on the famine ships. You can see it was very claustrophobic and tight. Cúng, claustrophobic, cúng. Oid nach bhfuil mórán spáis ann. A place where there was not much space to be had. Oid nach bhfuil mórán spáis ann. It could be very crowded down here. Plódathe, crowded, plódathe. And quite uncomfortable. Mi chumpordach, uncomfortable. Mi chumpordach. This is where the first class passengers would have travelled. An chéad grád, first class. An chéad grád. You can see this is a lot more private. Príomháideach, príomháideach, private. And certainly more comfortable. Níos compórdaí, more comfortable. Níos compórdaí. This is where they would have eaten meals, for example, along with the captain as well. This area here was for quarantine. The Irish for quarantine is very similar to the English word quarantine, quarantine. So any passengers that were sick or that maybe had typhus or dysentery or something like that would be kept here so the infection wouldn't spread. It was also used occasionally as a prison for misbehaving passengers. Presoon, a prison, presoon. This is where the crew slept. The Irish for crew is crew itself. You could just say it sounds very similar to the English word crew. Or also furin, which is a kind of a word like it means team as well. Furin. The crew were only paid once the ship returned to Ireland or Britain. This was in order to prevent them from fleeing once they landed in Canada or America. It's certainly more comfortable here than in steerage, but it doesn't quite have the luxury and privacy of first class. It was kind of in between both, if you know what I mean. This was the storage area. Seomra Storish. The storage area or storage room. Seomra Storish. And this is where the supplies for the trip were kept. Salahartí Duntras. Salahartí Duntras. Supplies for the trips. They would have to have enough food and other supplies to last the journey, which would typically last between 6 and 8 weeks to get across the Atlantic. Back up on deck then, this was a cooking area for first class and for the crew. Ag olvu an bia, preparing the food. Ag olvu an bia. This is the bell of the ship. Now this is said to be the original bell from the original Dunbrody. The Irish for bell is clug. Vi an clug ag bula. The bell was ringing. Vi an clug ag bula. In the second part of the tour, you learn about Gael very Connacht, Irish Americanism. Gael very Connacht. As I've said, America did hold lots of deisina. Deisina, as we learned earlier, was opportunities. Deisina. But there were also Goleor Duchlan, many challenges, or lots of challenges. Goleor Duchlan. In Ireland, you had to be of a certain wealth and land-owning class in order to vote or in order to better yourself in general. Very often the constituencies were gerrymandered to ensure a Protestant majority. So with that in mind, by the second half of the 19th century, it was just easier for Irish men to vote in America. Now that's not to say that other minorities, such as African Americans, Native Americans and Chinese, didn't suffer discrimination, because they certainly did. But from an Irish American perspective, democracy carried a lot more weight in America than it did under British rule. This here is a display. The Irish for a display is Taispeántas. Taispeántas. This Taispeántas is the Irish American Hall of Fame, and this proudly showcases the success stories of Irish emigrants and their descendants. But becoming leader of the free world, or a cultural living legend, or an astronaut, are not the only signs or symbols of success. For the most part, just making that brave decision to leave your family, friends and homeland, and then surviving the journey and building a life on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean was success enough. Here you learn about the most famous and iconic Irish American family, the Kennedys. John F. Kennedy's great-grandfather left these shores as a famine-era emigrant, and in 1963 his great-grandson came home as President of the United States of America. Tháinig sé a bhaile. He came home. Tháinig sé a bhaile. This visit in 1963 is known locally as the homecoming, because one of our own was simply coming home. It was incredibly emotional for people at the time. Mohuchanach, emotional. Mohuchanach. It was certainly iconic. Ahanta, iconic. Ahanta. Because vi brod an down uring. We were so proud. Vi brod an down uring. John F. Kennedy's great-grandfather Patrick left an Ireland where Catholics struggled to own land and get elected to high office due to discriminatory rules imposed by the British. His great-grandson would go on to become the first Catholic president of America. As I watched the footage of his 1963 homecoming, I could feel the goosebumps rise all over my body. And this is nearly 60 years ago, so imagine how the ordinary Irish person felt in 1963 during these magical 4 days when he visited his home. JFK gave us something far more important than words or deeds. He gave a state that was less than half a century old something incredibly important. Dóchas agus muín. Hope and confidence. Dóchas agus muín. From famine emigrant to leader of the free world in 3 generations. Now that's what I call the American dream. An Aisling very Connacht. The American dream. An Aisling very Connacht. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a greater understanding and insight into the conditions that Irish immigrants faced as they fled their own country in the 19th century. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll be back very soon with more regular videos on Irish verbs, phrases and things like that. So thanks for watching. Agus slán go fóill.